who you are. You don't know who you are, we can't talk about consciousness. If that's up for debate, if the community itself is debating who they are, then the community cannot then be called a conscious community. Which is why I say there is no such thing as a conscious community in that context, in the context we're talking about. All right, so the next question you have to ask yourself is, what am I?
Mother, before you get pregnant, correct your microbiome. We can link directly microbes to high IQs, and we can link certain microbes to low IQs in children. We know that microbes affect the IQ of children. We know they could affect the mental health and development of children. All right? We know that there's been misdiagnosis in our community for long periods of time based off a parasitic infestation that they claim not to be that they're not familiar with. Okay? The child will get its first microbiome from you, from the mother, who gets her microbiome from her mother added into her environmental microbiome.
Like, genetically, you're not a human. You're a symbiotic relationship of like 60 trillion microorganisms, right? Some of which have been with us so long, to this point now, we call them mitochondria. They've modified our body to a cellular level, right? So every human gene you carry 360 microbial genes for every one. So that means you literally contain more non-human genetic information than you do human information. You know, in fact, I think it's less than 1%. Less than 1% of your genome is exclusively human information. 8 to 9%. Check me out. 8 to 9% of your genome is viral information, which makes you basically more retrovirus than you are human. And that's before we calculate for the millions of years of interspecies like rat, cat, dog genome you got through a process we call it horizontal transduction, right? So like when you get a virus, it'll leave some of its information in your DNA, right? And sometimes it'll take some of your genetic information with it. So when it affects another animal or its next host or whatever, it's going to leave some. It can leave some of your genetic information, right, in that next host, and vice versa. You know, so that's what we call horizontal transduction. And so this has been happening for millions of years, the exchange of interspecies DNA.
So cleanse your microbiome before you bring people into the world. Understand that. Go through a cleanse, purify yourself before you even possibly going to be doing that, because this is how generational curses get passed down in a biological context. Like I say over and over again, the spiritual information has been separated by the scientific information because it is the Western way. It is the way of the world in which you live, to compartmentalize everything until you've obfuscated the people of any actual knowledge or truth. Everything's been fractalized. That's not an Africanism. We approached everything holistically as a whole. So what I'm telling you is to understand there are certain things that you have to do to be clean. We've been raised under a barbarian system. You have to understand this. This nation came way by barbarians and piracy, kidnappers, body snatchers. You understand? Colonialists. We were talking about pirates and barbarians, the same all the way from Vikings. We're talking about a massive group, a general body of people over a historical period of time. Like if I were to say Germany did this, doesn't mean that all the Germans were this way. We're talking about a general body of people, okay? And so what I'm talking about is that this whole conquest that we've fallen victim of, it was barbarianism, and it was Vikingism, and it was piracy, okay? So you've learned the ways of a pirate. You've learned the ways of a Viking. You've learned the ways of a barbarian. To be clean, you must also clean your microbiome. This is why the Native American danced around with the sage at the fire, right? To get rid of bad spirits, Oh, you think you're thinking of spookism, but you realize people stop dying because he's purifying the air of viruses and bacteria when he's lighting that sage. They've separated the science.
To be honest, when you say, "What are you?" You're a mass you're a mass that's constituted by 10,000 different species of animal. Like, you have to absorb that. That's not me using fanciful rhetoric. That's a, I'm speaking to an exactitude. You're 10,000 species of animal. That's what your mass. You're looking at. When we talk, we look at like the Masonic Lodge and all of these conspiracies for a secret, but the secrets are in these circumlocutory science journals. They just have to be. You have to understand they're over compartmentalized and coded in nomenclature, but you're a microcosmic universe. You're full of more inhabitants than we observe in the macro universe. You see? So now that the you're the overseer of a universe, when we first understand that, we're the overseer of an intercellular universe. What is the overseer of a universe? And you were created in the image of God. You see, to know the universe, you must know thyself. You are not a human. You are a force that has access to human information. This is science, right? Yeah, this is the science of the complexity of what you are beyond some three stance that you're this accessible 1% attribute of human. I'm returning to science, to what we call humanity, and the application of that science. So we have to start with who are we and what are we? And I'm not going to take the taxonomy that tells me that I'm a human when I know the less than 1% of my genetic information is exclusively human.
See, as like Candida, when we talk about yeast infection, you have yeast called, you have something called cordyceps. All right, it's a parasite that can be contracted, a yeast parasite that can be contracted by insects like an ant. Right? Once the ant contracts the cordyceps connects itself to the muscle fibers of the ant, okay? Hijacks the ant's body, makes the ant walk up to the bottom of a leaf or a flower, hang upside down, die, and it'll spore from the ant's head, okay? What's significant and what's interesting about this is that the cordyceps doesn't hijack the brain of the ant to make the ant do what it wants it to do, although we do see that with parasites in biology. It literally hijacks the muscle fibers, which means that the cordyceps, this yeast, got there of its own volition, of its own mind. It simply hijacked the muscle fibers. Now, we think, okay, this is just a small ant. That's one place we see this in biology, right? But look at the amount of this parasite that it took to do this in the ant, and then amplify that to the amount of yeast parasites and other parasites that you have in your biological body. And understand that there's people that's walking around here that's not totally in control. It's what's happening with a lot of mental health issues. We've already made that connection with schizophrenia and a lot of different things, depression. Grasshoppers, we see parasites that cause the animal to go and commit suicide, for lack of a better word, drown themselves in the nearest body of water.
And this is how the sorcery goes down. When you don't know who you are, what you are, you don't understand that you're supposed to be a king over that universe, and so you're not paying any attention to the biology from the aspect that you need to be dealing with population control, because you don't think of yourself as multiple beings in one. Right? So most of your problems are population control problems, which is why the CDC, all of this is out there. The CDC says we have a serious problem with parasitic infestation, even on a microbial level, or what we talk about worms or whatever. We have a problem with this, and it exists mostly amongst minorities, is what they say, amongst minorities, people with low income, and immigrants. And so you got things like Toxoplasma gondii, right? This is a microbe that you come into contact with through the animals, right? Dogs, cats, right? And so now you catch Toxoplasma gondii. A lot of times it affects children. It can make them blind. It can have a lot of complications. But you have to understand what this organism is. This organism, we see it in mice, and when it gets inside of a mouse, it can change the sexual orientation of that mouse. to interspecies sexual orientation to the point where the mouse is sexually attracted to the cat. So the mouse will go to the cat and the cat will eat the mouse, all because the parasite itself wanted to get into the larger host. This is the facts about Toxoplasma gondii, and the CDC says that roughly they estimate that their assumption, which I'm saying is low, is 40 million Americans carry this sexual altering parasitic entity. And so when they tell you it plagues mostly minorities and immigrants, right? They tell you that. And then the CDC will also let you know that a lot of misdiagnoses, this isn't me saying this, this is the CDC. A lot of misdiagnosis is taking place because, I quote, the doctors are unfamiliar with these parasites. So a lot of the misdiagnosis, do you understand that you can inherit the cancer of a parasite? If I tell you have 60 trillion beings inside of you and you're not taking care of yourself from the perspective of understanding you're a universe and you need to be watching who's in house, and then you have thousands and thousands, you've exponentially increased your likelihood of getting cancer because you can inherit the cancer of a parasite.